Good evening, you're watching The Big Story. I'm Dylan Ang, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. Coming up on the show, we have the latest on the escalating outbreak in the US as we check in with Bureau Chief Nirmal Ghosh, as well as the situation at home. But first, in Parliament today, more than $60 billion will be invested to expand and renew the rail network over the next 10 years. It will fund the Thomson East Coast Line, Jurong Region Line, and extensions to the North East and Downtown lines.
The hard lesson learned from the problems earlier faced by SMRT is that we must invest in good operations and maintenance. And this means engineering capabilities, as well as the timely renewal of old MRT and LRT lines.
All new public buses will be electric or hybrid, in line with a move towards cleaner energy by 2040. The government also encouraged taxi operators to switch to electric cabs. A trial of priority cabins will be launched on the North East Line from the end of this year. 2 centre cabins of each train located near platform lifts will be designated as priority cabins for vulnerable commuters such as seniors and wheelchair users. To tell us more about the transport updates, we have Senior Transport Correspondent Christopher Tan. Chris, the government has announced that it plans to phase out all vehicles which run solely on combustion engines by 2040. Now, there are about 900,000 combustion engine vehicles as of now. How realistic is this target?
Well, it's an aim-high target, I think. Even if everybody was convinced to switch, you will have to switch about 50,000 of them a year, on average. And that number would be bigger than some COE quarters in some years.
Yeah.
So secondly is that is the charging infrastructure ready? I mean, we are aiming for 28,000 by 2030. That's 10 years from now. I remember that it took us almost 10 years to build 1,006, right? Almost 10 years to build 1,006. That means for the next 10 years, we have to accelerate it almost by 10 times the speed, almost, right? And the thirdly is that motorbikes are not incentivized, right? They are not incentivized to switch to the new electric bikes, which are more costly. Unlike cars, they have incentives, but motorbikes no incentives, and there are 140,000 of them. So these are the hurdles that we'll face. The ones that will switch probably would be the commercial vehicles, the light goods vehicles. The incentives for them are actually quite generous, right? And I think quite a lot of them will switch. And from an environmental point of view, I think it's a good thing because these vehicles actually clock a lot of miles, right? They clock 3 times the distance of an average car.
Yeah. Now, Chris, let's zoom in on electric motorcycles for a moment. Now, they will be governed by a tiered licensing format. Is this similar to the current licensing for conventional motorbikes today? Are there any differences?
Yeah, so currently we have 3 tiers according to CC. The first one is up to 200, second one is up to 400 CC, and then the last one is unlimited. So the new one, we use power instead of CC because electric bikes don't have an engine, right? So they used an average, kind of an average of what the 200 CCs will produce, and they put a number to that. And the same with the second tier, which is the 2A, and then the limitless one. I think some models might kind of fall outside the line. So we are told that, say, for instance, the Honda Super 4, which is a very popular 400cc bike, if they would produce an electric variant, its power is likely to be above what the 2A cutoff is. So this bike will probably fall into the limitless class 2 tier, which is actually a smaller segment of the market.
Well, thank you,
so
Chris,
you will have a couple of models here and there,
Well, thank you, Chris, for taking the time to speak with us. That was Senior Transport Correspondent Christopher Tan. StraitsTimes.com for the latest transport news. Now, moving on, bubble tea may soon come with a nutrition label. From end 2021, pre-packaged and freshly prepared drinks with a high sugar or saturated fat content with a color-coded grading system from A to D, with D being the unhealthiest.
We want to encourage manufacturers to reformulate. The point is not to deprive Singaporeans of their favorite drinks, but to encourage manufacturers on their journey towards reformulation, to create a wider and broader range of healthy options for Singaporeans to enjoy.
Now, a new type of assisted living HDB flat for seniors will be launched in Bukit Batok in May. It will include support services such as a 24/7 emergency response and a community manager to encourage social interaction among the elderly. Here to tell us more is Senior Health Correspondent Salma Khalik. Salma, the Health Minister unveiled a lot of details during COS. Which one stood out for you the most and why?
Well, frankly, there were two things. One is the infrastructure that he's going to build, and the other one was the sugar that you mentioned, the sugary drinks. Okay, for infrastructure, he said that he's going to build 2 new hospitals in the east, a general hospital and a community hospital, because Changi General Hospital is going to face a crunch very soon. But those 2 hospitals wouldn't be ready for another 10 years by 2030.
Yeah.
Another 2 new polyclinics at Bishan and Bidadari. And also, Alexandra Hospital is going to be rebuilt while the hospital still runs. It's going to have a bigger piece of land, and the hospital will be used to try out new ways of treating people. So that's interesting. Then the other thing, obviously, is a sugar label. We've been talking about it for some years.
Yeah.
You know, we've had focus group discussions, asking people for feedback. So the decision finally is to label A, B, C, D. A and B are good, C and D are bad. You do not have to use a label if you're a good drink. So you don't have to say mine is an A label or a B label, but you must say it if yours is a C or a D.
Okay.
And it's not just sugar, but also fat content.
Ah, okay, I see. Now, Salma, let's move on a little bit from that to the Singapore's aging society. Has long been an issue that the government is addressing, and now the government is addressing it with a slew of measures. Can you expand on the most important moves?
Well, to me, again, 2. Right. One is allowing people to use a little bit more MediSave if you are age 60 years and older with complex chronic problems. So you either have 2 problems or you have 1 problem with complications. You may draw on an extra $200 from your MediSave for outpatient treatment. But the other thing, which I find very exciting, are these assisted living service flats concept. I believe Minister Lawrence Wong, MND, already mentioned yesterday that there'll be 160 such flats. Today, the Health Ministry elaborated. These flats will have not just the call button, which you expect, but also other services. So they'll charge a basic amount of money. We don't know how much, but for that money, you get certain basic services. And then you can build up on top of that. So, for example, I may be staying alone, in one of these flats, and I may want to have my food delivered. I just pay more for that, or for my laundry to be done, or I may need accompaniment when I go see a doctor. So all these, will be made available. So it sounds very exciting.
Certainly is. Now, many thanks for joining us again, Salma. That was, of course, Senior Health Correspondent Salma Khalik. Now, keep up to date with all the developments in Parliament at straitstimes.com. Now, do join us for a special episode of The Big Story this coming Monday, 9th of March, where Salma will be helming a special discussion with some of Singapore's top COVID-19 experts, including Associate Professor Kenneth Mark from the Ministry of Health, to talk about how the outbreak and what to expect. Moving on to the coronavirus situation overseas, Malaysia now has 50 confirmed cases after 14 new infections were reported on Wednesday. This is the largest single-day increase. 81 countries and territories have been affected by the virus. More than 90,000 people have been infected and around 3,200 have died. China reported a rise in new confirmed cases, this after 3 straight days of declining numbers. 139 new cases were reported on Wednesday, bringing the total number of cases to 80,409. In South Korea, the number of new cases approached 6,000 as authorities reported 145 new infections. 3 additional fatalities took the death toll to 35. So far, 36 countries and regions have imposed a blanket entry ban on people who have recently been in South Korea's southern regions. In Italy, 28 more deaths were reported, taking the toll to 107 and making it the deadliest outbreak outside China. The total number of infected hit 3,089 on Wednesday. The continued outbreak prompted the country to shut all schools and universities, as well as impose a month-long nationwide ban on fan attendance at sports events. In the United States, the first death in California was announced, an elderly adult with underlying health conditions. California Governor Gavin Newsom on Wednesday declared a state of emergency over the coronavirus in the state, which now has 53 confirmed cases. In Washington, D.C., Congress reached a deal to provide more than $8 billion to fight the outbreak. Joining us now from the US is US Bureau Chief Nirmal Ghosh. Nirmal, Mike Pence said new guidelines would allow any American to be tested, no restrictions, subject to doctors' orders. What are the pros and cons of this change?
Yes, there's a lot of pros. Now, frontline doctors and nurses no longer have to administer 2 tests first before evaluating whether someone should be tested for coronavirus. Now they can test someone first for coronavirus, and they can test regardless of that person's history. Earlier, they only tested people who had traveled to countries affected by outbreaks or who had been in contact with a diagnosed patient or had severe symptoms. Now that they can test immediately, they can more quickly detect the virus in someone who may have only mild symptoms and no connections with travel or with other diagnosed cases. Then, besides identifying infected people so that they know and they can self-quarantine or get the supportive treatment they need, it will certainly give a more accurate picture of how prevalent the virus is and how and where it is spreading. All that data will also help. We are learning new things almost every day about this virus. But, and this is a big but, it doesn't mean that much yet because there are still forms that doctors have to fill out. They still have to get the test from somewhere, and that has to be signed off on. I just spoke to a doctor in Seattle who said 2 phone calls have to be made and then the decision is made to test or not. He was unaware of any information that anything had changed in practice in that respect. So it may not be working straight away as we speak in every hospital. And besides, there is still a shortage of test kits. The White House has said there will be 1.5 million test kits out around the end of this week. So this is only going to start working when all this comes together. But once it does, assuming there is far more widespread testing, we can probably assume or expect there will be a rise in numbers of cases. That may be alarming and would be alarming if it is a very significant rise, but it would be because more tests are being done.
Now, the Food and Drug Administration said that 1 million people can be tested by the end of the week. Do you think this is realistic?
It is possible because the United States has the capacity to do it, but there are obstacles. Number one is the logistics of the rollout of test kits. Second is their use in the field, in hospitals, and then how the labs use them. We just heard from a woman in Washington State. She was speaking to CNN. Her mother was in the care home, that is the epicenter there, just northeast of Seattle, and she had been to visit her mom. And she and others have been asking to be tested for days, but were told they don't meet the criteria. Now, just today, she got word that they can come for tests tomorrow. So once everyone knows what to do and the test kits are available, then yes, it will ramp up significantly, and it could be in many thousands. But 1 million this week, I don't know, but it's possible to have 1 million next week.
How would you describe how the White House has handled the outbreak so far?
Not ideally. There were mixed messages at first from the president, and that was confusing. He seemed to believe the virus wasn't a big deal. But then the stock market went down, and then he came out strongly, and now he makes a point of emphasizing that his early action in stopping non-US citizens from coming from China was a key factor in keeping the virus from arriving earlier. So the messaging was not clear, and it quickly became intensely political, and that confused people, many of whom do not have that much trust in government anyway. So then we saw them move quickly to boost confidence, step it up with the high-level task force. And President Trump has been having meetings every day. Today, he met with representatives of the airline industry. And Congress, just a few hours ago, came to an agreement on a roughly $8.3 billion of emergency funding. And that will be signed by the president in a couple of days. It includes more than $3 billion for the research and development of vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics, as well as $2.2 billion for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. But that is only happening now. And only half of that money will be dispersed within about 30 days. Of course, it's better late than never, but it could also have been done much earlier.
Thank you, Nirmal, for your insights. Back in Singapore, Health Minister Gan Kim Yong has said that Singapore needs to prepare to live with COVID-19 for the long term. He called on Singaporeans to brace themselves for more new cases as the number of those infected outside China continues to grow at alarming rates. He added that the nation will have to continuously adjust to deal with the evolving situation. Moving on, the Health Ministry also announced 2 new cases of the coronavirus on Wednesday, taking the total number of cases here to 112, of which 79 have fully recovered. Of the 33 still in hospital, 7 are in critical condition. And the Thai embassy in Singapore has also clarified that healthy Singaporeans arriving in Thailand need not self-quarantine. This comes after confusion sparked by conflicting statements from the authorities in Bangkok. And finally, a passenger who arrived in Singapore from Istanbul on a Turkish Airlines flight tested positive for COVID-19 on Wednesday. The Ministry of Health has started contact tracing for passengers aboard flight TK54 who may have had contact with the case. Now, to end off the show, let's take a look at a ground-up initiative to distribute 4,000 sanitizers to foreign workers staying at Leo Dormitory, where a Bangladeshi worker was infected.
I'm here at Leo Dormitory at Kaki Bukit Road. Now, if you remember previously, there was a confirmed case of the COVID-19 infection. And today we have the organizers from Ops hands-on to distribute hand sanitizers and other essentials, as well as educate the foreign workers on the importance of hygiene. After a hard day's work, all 4,000 foreign workers who returned to Leo Dormitory received a bottle of hand sanitizer, a bun and a packet drink each. They were also briefed on maintaining one's personal hygiene and when and how to use the hand sanitizers. This ground-up initiative is part of the Ops hands-on movement by outdoor camp operators Future Ready Asia and InnoTrack.
So we have been reaching out to the elderly, the seniors, and this time round we decided to reach out to the foreign workers. I have a conversation with one of my partner called Auto Solution, and he was telling me that some of the workers were very worried. So the whole idea about reaching out to the foreigners is really to help them, to assure them, to educate them, and to also give them some blessing, where we give them a hand sanitizer, some drinks, and some bread. And it's also to let them know that even though they are foreign workers here, as Singaporeans, we also care about their well-being.
The Leo Dormitory is home to the first Bangladeshi worker who tested positive for COVID-19. The report has left the residents worried about their well-being. Employers like Mr. Andy Lai even had his workers requested to return to their home country.
Firstly, we need to be concerned about the fear, and from identifying the fear, then we need to assure them, right? So one of the things that we did is that we brief them. We brief them every morning, and we supply them with, sanitizer. We supply them with a mask, and we told them to wash their hands. We cut posters for them and put a notice board, and then we send WhatsApp to all the people. I think it's a good initiative. These foreign workers are just like our parents 50 years ago, came in here to make an honest living and feeding their families, right? So based on that, I think it's our duty to take care of them and to assure them and to protect them as well.
I had the opportunity to talk to some of the foreign workers about how they are coping with the situation. I'm in one of the rooms here at Leo Dormitory with our friends Shaheen, Mizan and Vijay. Guys, if you could share with me, the first time when you heard about the coronavirus outbreak in Singapore, and in fact when one of the confirmed cases actually came from Leo Dormitory, how do you feel about it?
Actually, this coronavirus, when I heard from in my dormitory, the cases, I was very scared. And, even Bangladesh, my family also very scared. So they asked me to go back in Bangladesh. The management from the Leo Dormitory, they take few steps. Like they every day take the temperature, actually twice a day. And they give us instruction how to use the masks and where to use the masks. And you sometimes need to use the sanitizers. So now we stay safe.
For my work area, actually when you go to work, many way to have tasks, the lift, the button, a staircase or handrail. So my company first step already before the briefing, and they take a step to put outside the available water to wash our hand by shop. Even go office, also our now sitting distance also 2 meter, 3 meter gap to make everybody safe. And regularly they have the checking our temperature every day twice, morning and evening time. So it's the good things for us or for company, I think for everybody.
So I always follow the oneself, the safety is follow also. So I am working the on-site. So I morning every day go, the evening come back. So come back time, I directly go the pantry, clean the hand clean first, then another job start.
Well, thank you guys, for sharing your experiences with us. Now, as you can see, it is clear that efforts and measures are in place to keep our foreign workers safe so that they will be assured that they are protected not only at work but also right here at the dormitories.
Now do join us for a special Big Story episode on Monday, 9th of March, where Senior Health Correspondent Salma Khalik will host a special discussion with some of Singapore's top COVID-19 experts, including Associate Professor Kenneth Mark from the Ministry of Health, to talk about how the outbreak will pan out over the next 3 months. And those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, log on to straitstimes.com. And once again, I'm Dylan. Join us tomorrow for more stories on A Big Story.